What is up, guys? Well, it is that time again, a year later, and I have just recently attended Mad Monster Party in Concord, North Carolina. Got to meet some of my all-time horror heroes, straight up bucket list events. And I was there Friday and Saturday this year. So I'm going to talk about all of the cool experiences that I had, give some stories about the different celebs that I met and how I interacted with them, show off some pictures, talk a little bit about some of the other people that I met, fans of the channel and such like that, and just give you a bit of an idea of what my experience was like at last weekend's Mad Monster Party. So as a lot of you guys know, I attended this convention last year whenever they had some of the Lost Boys there. They had Jason Patrick and Kiefer Sutherland and a few others there, and that was actually my first experience at a horror con, and I had an absolute blast. I spent all day Saturday there, and as soon as I heard back in like September, October of last year that they were going to have Robert Englund as the big premiere guest of this year. I mean, they could not have announced anybody else, and I still would have made a beeline straight to North Carolina. And they slowly started to announce some more guests, and then they dropped the second bomb, which is that Brad Dourif was going to be at this convention center. And so it's like Chucky and Freddy, my two main guys in the same building. Hell itself is not going to stop me from enjoying myself this weekend. And I have to give credit where credit is due. I think that the only reason I was able to have as good of a time as I did at this most recent convention this weekend is because of a man named Nathan Matney. And Nathan is a guy that I met last year at the very end of last year's convention. It was like the last hour or so. I was still walking around. I think I was waiting on my picture to be printed before I left. And turned a corner, he was standing there, recognized me, shouted out my name, walked over, talked to him, we got to know each other, and we stayed in contact ever since over the last year. And Nathan is somebody who actually works for Mad Monster. And so he reached out to me and basically assured me, like, hey, if you come out, I'll make sure that you have the best time possible. So not only am I glad to call him a friend because he's just a really cool guy and we have a lot in common as far as movies and stuff, but he absolutely ensured that with all the craziness that was going on Friday and Saturday, that I had the best experience possible, got to do every single thing that I wanted to. So nothing but gratitude and hats off to Nathan for doing that, because with guests like Robert Englund and Brad Dourif, if I was just there on my own accord, I think that it's probably slim to no chance that I would have been able to meet everybody that I wanted to. Probably would have had to choose between Robert and Brad, to be honest with you, or only meet those two and not have time to meet anybody else, which would have been cool, but would have been disappointing. We are back at Mad Monster Party in Concord, North Carolina. So today is Friday. I'm going to spend all day today as well as all day tomorrow here, tomorrow being the biggest day. And I get to meet Robert Englund and Brad Dourif. I mean, come Sunday, I guess I can just die. And, you know, life's complete at that point. I've got kids, I got a great wife, I met Robert Englund, I met Freddy and Chucky. What else is there to do? But get ready to head inside now. I got a hotel this time, I got an RIP pass, so it's gonna be much better set up than I was last year. But it's gonna be a fun time, so stay tuned. So let's start right off with Friday night. The convention opened at 6 and it was 5:30 for anybody with the RIP badge, which is kind of like the premium pass. It's like the fast pass, if you will. And so I got into the building and immediately upon bodies being inside of that convention center, there was a massive line lined up for Robert Englund, who was upstairs. He was the only one who was kind of off by himself where everybody else shared the convention floor. And so even though I was there 30 minutes before opening, walking around, hanging out, talking to people, I did not get a chance to meet Robert that first night. That is how fast and how crazy his lines can get. So they cut it off at a certain point, knowing that the convention was only going to be open for like 4 or 5 hours. And then they had everybody just take tickets, come back the next day, And it was wild. I mean, I'd always heard stories from people, especially my buddy Rudy, who's been at a number of these conventions and has worked a number of them, that Robert Englund's lines are like next level. I mean, they just don't compare to anybody else. You can stand in his line from opening to close and still not get anywhere close to actually being able to meet him. That's just the crazy amount of star power that Robert Englund has. So I was not able to meet him Friday night, unfortunately, but I had a photo op with him. And so what I did was I took that opportunity to go ahead and meet Brad and Fiona Dourif because I knew their lines were going to be absolutely psychotic on Saturday. Friday, they were still the biggest lines outside of Robert, but they were manageable. So I got into Brad's line and it was only like a 35 minute wait or whatever. And I expected him to be a little quieter. I had kind of heard that from a few people, and he was surprisingly talkative with me. He wasn't super quiet. I walked up, and it was great to meet him, and told him I've been a lifelong Chucky fan, as most of us do. I always have like this difficulty where I'm trying to figure out like something really unique to say, but at the same time, like I can't not tell them what their work means to me, even though they've heard it 10,000 billion times, even just in the last hour. So I don't know. I always open up with that, if nothing else, before I get into questions, but. He was super cool, and I was trying to figure out what picture to sign, and the person who was his handler was like, hey, he likes to sign this picture the best, if that helps. And so I picked out, which it's also convenient. This is one of my favorite images, period, in the Child's Play franchise, but I got him to sign the Child's Play 2 artwork. And one of the reasons why I suspect he really likes to sign it is because he is able to write on the scissors here, and he actually draws these little blood trails. So to Cody, and then he's got his initial here, or like a signature, and Chucky here. One thing that's interesting about Brad is he's got a really small signature. A lot of people have like these big extravagant signatures that take up a big chunk of the picture, and he's very minimalist with what he does. So I got him to sign this, and I was asking him, I said, how does it, it's got to be fun doing conventions and stuff like this with your daughter, right? And he made me laugh. He's like, yeah, I don't know. She's all about this. She kind of drags me into a lot of this. So you can tell he's in like his quieter, wanting to have a little bit more solace stage of his life, but putting it all on his daughter that she drags him out to these cons and they can do the 2-for-1 stuff. So that was cool. He started talking about her new show, The Pit, which I have not seen, but he was recommending it to me and said that it was really good. And something that I thought would be pretty cool is I wanted every major person that I met, I wanted to ask them their 3 favorite movies. Just one, out of curiosity, but 2, I thought it would be like a cool follow-up video idea where maybe like next month or something, I'll do a ranking video and I'll rank Robert Englund, Brad Dourif, Fiona Dourif, Danielle Harris, all their favorite movies from worst to best. And a number of them would be first-time watches. And so I asked him what his favorite films are. I told him I'm a YouTuber and what I was going to do with it. And then I asked him his favorite films, and he gave me The Red Balloon, The Bicycle Thief, and 400 Blows, all of which are pretty old films that I have never seen. So Brad Dourif's are all going to be first-time watches. But yeah, it was very cool meeting Brad, and I wish I could have had more time to talk with him. That's always the feeling that you leave whenever you meet somebody like that at a con, but you try to respect everybody else's time, and it was just very cool. So he was actually staged right next to his daughter. So I literally just went from his line to run to my photo op with Robert Englund. So I got to spend 3 seconds in the sun with Robert Englund. And what was really cool about his photo op is that he kind of customized each individual one. So every person that came up, he did a new pose. So one person came up and he's got like the Freddy glove around their face, and the other person comes up and he's got it around the side. And then I come up and he just puts his hand on my shoulder. He's like, all right, we're just 2 guys hanging out in the yard. And so I laughed. It was super cool. And I'm also very, very grateful that I decided to get his picture on Friday rather than Saturday. Not only because the line was significantly shorter, but because on Saturday there was just so many people and he was standing for so long that I looked on the table, and the majority of his photo ops on Saturday, he was actually sitting in a chair, which, I wouldn't have minded. Of course, I wouldn't have objected to anything like that. He's a very old guy, so by all means, take a seat. But I'm glad that on Friday, I got the more energetic version of Robert, and so it's just a picture of me and him, and I'll show it a little later because that's actually what I got signed. So ran over to get the photo op with him, super cool, and then I ran back into the convention center and got into Fiona Dourif's line. And let me tell you, Fiona Dourif is the life of the party. That woman was just like fun, having a great time, talking with everybody and cracking jokes. And something else that was one of the coolest things about being around her to discover as a fan is that whole like Brad Dourif Chucky laugh that she does so well in the show that everybody's always been like so impressed. Like, oh my God, she sounds just like her dad. Yeah, that's her real fucking laugh. She's not acting. She's not doing any kind of voice work whatsoever. That's her real laugh. So the whole time that we're all in line waiting to meet her, you'll just hear her go off and cackle like, ah! It was like, the Wicked Witch of the West or something. So that was so fucking charming and cool that that's just her normal laugh. But yeah, she was talking with everybody, and I was like maybe 4 or 5 people away from getting to meet her, and she started talking about all the newer horror movies out there, and she was trying to talk about Hard Eyes and Companion and stuff. She couldn't think of the title of Companion, and I was like, I don't want to be the weirdo who yells it out. So I just kind of like stuck it in my back pocket. And then right when I was like 3 people away from being up to her table, they had to yank her and Brad to go do their photo op. So we just kind of stood there for about 30 minutes. And when she finally came back and I got a chance to meet her, she was super cool, like super friendly. And what was really interesting about her is that she's somebody that absolutely leads the conversation, which is really good for those of us that have any kind of like nervousness or anxiety, which a lot of people do at these cons. They kind of clam up and they don't really know what to say. And it's nice to have somebody that leads the conversation and asks you about you and things like that, because it leaves no spot for any awkward dead space. So, I walked up, I picked a picture to be signed by her. Of course, I told her I was a huge fan of everything that she's doing with Chucky and everything. And she started to get everything down, and I said, hey, that movie you were talking about earlier is Companion. And it's awesome. Like, of all the movies out right now, that's the one to see. And she's like, oh, really? So we talked about that for really a second. And then she looked down at the picture that I picked and she says, Cody, are you a big Chucky guy? And I said, oh, I've been a Chucky fanatic ever since I was like 4 years old. I said, I walked into the room and my dad was watching Child's Play 3 and it hooked me, and I've been off to the races as a horror fan ever since. And she looked at me and she went, Child's Play 3? That's like one of the worst ones. And I was like, oh, I said, I always find myself defending this movie. So then we talked about that for a second. And I was talking about how great the one-liners are. And I would have liked to have talked about it more. But yeah, so she's also in company with Don Mancini and not being a big Child's Play 3 fan. And so she was kind of laughing at some of the one-liners that I was throwing out and everything. And she said, are you like a big military guy? Like, you got military in the family? And I said, well, I guess technically I do. My dad was served for a little bit. My uncle has been like a lifelong military guy. My youngest brother's in the military. There's prospects that maybe my son will go into it. And so we ended up talking about the military for like a good 2 minutes or so, which was a very random topic, but it was interesting to chat with her about that. And then so she signed this picture for me, and she was kind of smiling as she signed it. And she goes, I might get myself in trouble for this. And then I looked at it and I laughed. So I got this picture here, like the evil Nika, and it says, to Cody, you have a decent defense for Child's Play 3. I'm not convinced, but I appreciate it. Fiona Dourif. So that was super cool, being the Child's Play 3 defender. And, whenever Ken Sledge watches this video, I'm sure he's going to be high-fiving me for that one. And then I asked her favorite movies really quick before I stepped away. And her picks were a movie called Naked by Mike Leigh, Breaking the Waves, and Dangerous Liaisons, which I have never seen any of those 3 either. So those are all going to also be first-time watches for me whenever I get around to it. And for the most part, that's what I did on day 1. Those were the big priorities. Get those. Was supposed to get all 3 of them, but as I said, couldn't get Freddy. But that was a good space to kind of relax and walk around and chill on Friday. And I met a ton of you guys on Friday and on Saturday. I met people that were standing in Freddy's line. I met a couple people that were in line to meet Brad Dourif. Every time I walked by Brad Dourif's line, there was somebody new that recognized me in that line. And so it was super cool. I'm going to put some pictures throughout this video of some of the ones that I've been tagged in and some of the ones that I've had sent to me. I don't have all of them, unfortunately, but it was really awesome. It's one of the best things about going to these conventions is getting to meet a lot of you guys in person, because I cannot stress enough how much that's like a reassurance for me, and how much that like validates that I'm doing something right, and how much it's just like a really nice counterbalance to all of the psychotoxic stuff that happens in the comment section or on Twitter or anywhere else. You know, it's so easy to get caught up in that sometimes whenever it's really, really ramping up and just think that that's all that it is out there. And then it just takes one interaction with a genuine fan and somebody walking up and, you know, wanting to take a picture with you and telling you how much their channel means to them and how much entertainment it's brought them or what movies you've introduced them to, that makes all that shit wash away into background noise. And I probably met 30, 35 of you guys. So that's just like exponentially more. So please, anytime you see me, whether it's a convention or walking around a fucking grocery store or whatever, which has happened, if you recognize me and you want to approach me, I promise you I'm super easy to approach. I'm super easy to talk to, and don't be nervous or anything like that. I love meeting you guys. So every single person that I met on Friday and Saturday, absolutely awesome to meet you. And I hope to see you guys again. Hope to meet even more of you at further events. So Friday night, it was pretty chill. It was pretty chill being there Friday night. I recommend that if you're going to go to Mad Monster and you have the time to be able to do 2 different days, definitely do the Friday, Saturday, because Friday is like kind of a soft open. It's the quieter of the 3 days. Typically, the big headliners are still there. Not always. It's listed usually on their website. But it was a really cool, soft opening to kind of get the vibe of everything and meet certain people and go get into some of what would be the heavier lines on Saturday, and then just going balls out the next day on Saturday. So I recommend doing that. That was much better than doing it all in one day and just darting around the place like crazy trying to meet everybody. I just met Brad Dourif, and then half an hour later got a picture with Robert Englund. What the fuck? Now, the thing that happened Friday night that was cool for me, which, you know, those of you that live in certain regions of the U.S. might get an appeal out of this story, and other people are going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I've been doing like a crazy fitness journey since the beginning of this year, since right after my birthday, actually. Been on a really strict diet, been working out 6 times a week instead of 5 times a week. And I had basically built myself up throughout the week and, you know, really sparingly ate certain things to make sure that I had a little bit of room to be a little loose with my diet while I was out of town, because it's always hard to eat good when you're out of town. But it's also one of my favorite things about traveling, and something that was really cool for me. So I grew up in Ohio, and one of my favorite pizza places in Ohio when I was a kid is called Hungry Howie's. I'm not saying it's one of the greatest pizza places on earth. It's probably not better than a lot of ones you guys are going to recommend to me for sure, but I had a lot of nostalgia for it as a kid, and I have not had it in a very long time. So when I got back to my hotel, I was starving, and I looked on DoorDash, and I was like, son of a bitch, there's a Hungry Howie's here. And so I ordered a pizza, had it delivered, and I was so excited, and I went to go bite in. I was like, oh my God, this is so good. I got like a bacon cheeseburger pizza, and it was fucking delicious. And then my stomach reminded me, hey bitch, we've been on a diet for like the last 2 months, so we're not going to eat a whole lot of this. So just make sure that you know you're going to waste a lot of what you just ordered. And so usually, like, you know, when I'm not on a diet and I'm just eating whatever, not to say that I'm proud of this, I could put away, you know, half a pizza if it's fucking delicious. And I maybe got through a slice and a half, and I was just like, oh, I can't do it anymore. So it's kind of a good thing because it keeps you accountable. It keeps you on your diet. But goddamn, it was a really nice taste of nostalgia, and I wanted to eat so much more. I wanted to be able to bring it home, but of course it was a hotel room with one of the mini fridge. And so I couldn't save it. So I basically paid like $30, $40 for a slice and a half of pizza and a drink. But it was worth it. It was worth it. Any Hungry Howie's fans in the house? Anybody? Now we have Saturday, and priority number 1 on Saturday was to immediately get into Robert Englund's line. And things were starting to get complicated because you had all of the people that had tickets for Friday that were cut off at the line that were guaranteed to be put in the front of the line on Saturday. Plus you had all the RIP members that were let into the building 30 minutes early. Plus you just had the whole slew of everyone that was coming to check out the convention on its busiest day. And so within seconds, Robert Englund's line was set to be a day long. So luckily, with the help of my buddy Nathan, as I said, I probably would not have had this opportunity if it wasn't for him. I probably would have been one of those people walking away a little upset. I was able to immediately go upstairs. I was like maybe 30th in line to meet him whenever everything started. And what was kind of cool about it is that they put you upstairs in this little room. So they have like a couple different queues. They have the line going to the stairs. Then they have a room that's kind of like a chair queue. And then they have the room that Robert's actually in, where they have about 5 or 6 people at a time go in there to talk with them and get their pictures signed. So it's like a 3-step process. And so I was sitting in this room for probably about an hour and a half or so, waiting on Robert, and finally get into the room with him. And I had heard from a number of people that have met him, my buddy Rudy, that actually was his assistant at one point at a convention, that Robert is a talker. And the security guy that was working for Robert came into our room to kind of give us a briefing like 3 or 4 times while we were in there. And that was the main thing he kept emphasizing. Like, hey guys, it's going to take a little while. It's going to be a long morning, but it'll be worth it because he likes to talk. He really cares about his fans. And that is the thing that I think is super important to keep in mind when it comes to Robert Englund at these conventions. Because the main point of controversy that I saw in the Facebook group and heard throughout the weekend was how many people were just pissed off that it was not easier to meet Robert Englund, even if they had an RIP pass. Listen to me now. If you have plans to go to a convention where Robert Englund is going to be there and he is a main priority for you, absolutely, you have to buy whatever the premium ticket is, whether it's an RIP pass or whatever another convention calls it, anything that's going to be like a skip the line type or an early admission type benefit. You're going to basically require that to be able to have a chance at meeting him. Get in there as early as possible and be prepared that that's going to take up a good bit of your day. I know some people don't like hearing that. Some people would much rather it be like every other line where you just go through and it's 2-3 seconds a piece. But I'm here to tell you, even if I was not able to meet Robert Englund this weekend, I would never want him to compromise that experience and be one of those people that we're always disappointed to have an experience with, where you stand in line, you pretty much made the trip to meet this person, you pay $100+ to get an autograph and have a few seconds with them, and they just sign the picture, hand it to you, and move on. That's the worst. So I know it's frustrating. I know it's very aggravating. I know it's disappointing. And Lord knows, if I was one of the people that was not able to meet Robert, I would be crushed. But I would never want that experience to change just to benefit me or to prevent that disappointment. I love the fact that he does that. So when you finally get into the room to meet Robert, like I said, it's like 5 or 6 people at a time. And what's really unique and cool about it is that it really feels like you get about 15 or 20 minutes with him, because you're in the room with everybody else while he's talking. He's telling stories, he's answering questions, he's talking about film and, theater and making jokes. Once in a while, he might throw out a little Freddie catchphrase or something like that. And you're just there absorbing it all as if he's talking directly to you most of the time. And he kind of is. Like, he's never just talking to the person standing in front of him. He turns his head and he talks to everybody there. He really does care about his fans. And that's a very awesome, unique thing to see that I love. Makes me love the man even more. So I was very indecisive when I got into this room. I typically get some kind of a promo picture like I've already shown with Fiona and Brad that's sitting on their table. I don't typically bring posters or Funko Pops or anything like that to be signed. I like to just get a picture that they have available. There's usually a really good selection. I pick my favorite, they sign it. And when I looked at Robert's table, I was so indecisive about what I wanted. So I almost got the original Nightmare on Elm Street poster, and then I was like, I don't know, I don't really want a poster. And so then I got this promo image of him and Freddy versus Jason that was badass, because it was him in like a kill pose, and there was a big empty space that would have been perfect for him to write something that wouldn't impede on the image. So I went back to the table and I got that, and I sat down for a while. And then after I moved 2 or 3 people forward, I got cold feet again. I went and put it away. And I decided, since I already had my professional photo op with him, I was like, I've never really had the opportunity, because of the timing of how I usually do things, to get a picture of me and somebody signed. So eventually I just landed on getting the professional photo op that I got with him Friday night signed. So he signed it and said, "Welcome to Elm Street, Robert Englund." And what was really cool about that is that he must not get that very often. Because when I brought the picture up, he was like, "Oh man, this turned out great." And he was looking at it, and I said, "Yeah." I said, "We're just 2 guys hanging out in the yard, right?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, this is cool." Like, "Yeah, this turned out really good." And what I especially like about the way Mad Monster does things is they put you in front of a green screen. So they always put some kind of a custom backdrop. So this is obviously Nancy's house, and you'll see a couple more later on. Last year with the Lost Boys, it was like the underground cave. So I love that detail. Don't wear green or blue. If you're going to Mad Monster, wear something that's going to be easy to key out. But it was cool that he was excited to see an actual picture of us together. And it wasn't just like another stock image that he's signed 10,000 times. And so we were in there, and he was talking about like some of his first roles and talking about Broadway and different things. And I got up to him, of course, did my little spiel about, love your work. It's been a huge part of my life since I was like 3 or 4 years old. And so he was talking a lot about film. Like, he's a really huge film fan. He's not one of those people that just kind of has a light interest in the industry or is kind of limited to horror. Like, he's a real like historian of film. And so he was talking about a lot of that. And I said, well, what's the best film that you've seen most recently? And he said, The Girl with the Needle, which is a film I have not seen. I believe it's up for Oscars for for international feature. It's a foreign film. But he said, The Girl with the Needle is the best film I've seen in so long. And he said, have you guys seen Nosferatu? And I was like, yes, yes. And he said, it's along the lines of that, but it was so much better for me. He said, it's the best set design that I've seen in years. So I'm going to have to check it out. It wasn't one of his recommendations for this ranking video that I'm going to do, but he was talking about that for a while. And then I asked him for his favorite films. And what was cool is he has these little cards that he gives away at his signing table. And so I just grabbed one and I turned it over. I said, can you do me a favor, sir? I said, I'm a YouTuber and I'm going around today, and everybody that I meet, I'm asking their 3 favorite movies so that I can follow up this experience and do like a ranking video. And so he grabbed a pen, and his 3 picks were Sisters, which is a Brian De Palma film, which I've never seen, but I've heard of. So I'm very curious to check it out. Wicker Man. And what was great about that is he's like, Wicker Man. He started writing it down. I said, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you're probably not talking about the Nicolas Cage one. And he laughed. He goes, no, OG. So he wrote OG underneath it to make sure I didn't fuck that up. And then to round out his 3, he put The Bride of Frankenstein. So those were his 3 favorites. And so I thanked him, shook his hand, walked out. And it was just a really cool experience. Absolutely worth the wait. Absolutely worth the price of admission. So as I've said, like, he's somebody you do have to plan around. He's somebody that you do have to have a little bit of a coin flip. You have to make sure you're there early. Try to get to the front of the line as soon as possible. And there's a very solid chance, even if you pay for the premium pass, if you don't get there soon enough, that you're not going to get to meet Robert. And one thing that I want to say, because that was really the only thing that I heard a number of people really upset about with this year's Mad Monster, both on the Facebook group as well as in person. And it's a shame to me that, we all do this as far as like our consumer experience, but I wish a lot of us would get better about it. There's always going to be reasons to be frustrated when you're a consumer, sometimes not feeling like you're getting your money's worth, or feeling like you're getting screwed over, or feeling like things aren't being ran the way that they should be. But it's really important to make sure that you direct that frustration in the direction that it's actually deserved. The people that are running the convention, the people that are, the people that you can contact and talk with, like, those are the ones that frustration has to be communicated to. One, so that they know it and can hopefully do something better about it next year. But it was really frustrating to hear that a lot of the volunteers and people that were running certain areas of this convention that had nothing to do with the planning or the execution around the Robert Englund line were getting everybody's daggers and were getting everybody's negativity and frustration thrown at them, when they're just trying to dedicate their time to giving everybody the best experience that they can, despite frustrations like that. So specifically, I wanted to give a shout out to Fiona and Cody, who were 2 women who were running the RIP room, which is essentially like the break room for those that have the RIP pass, where you can get out of the convention, sit down, take a load off, get some snacks, get some water. And they not only decorated this room themselves and ran the room the entire weekend and sacrificed a lot of their time and ability to go out and meet people and get things signed and get photo ops just to make sure everybody that's there is comfortable. But they were doing things like putting on certain movies for people to watch. Like, they played Stephen King's It. They played Labyrinth. They were playing, I think, like Conjuring or Insidious was playing at one point. And they were also putting together trivia games and getting prizes for people to win. Like, really going way out of their way to do things to try to make everybody that paid for the RIP pass have the best experience possible. And it was just very frustrating to know that, people like that always don't really get their flowers. It's very much taken for granted, and that's a shame. But even more so, it's frustrating to hear that they, especially Sunday, which is the day that I wasn't even there, apparently got a lot of the blunt end of people's frustration with the Robert Englund situation. So if there's anything that I can say is like a life lesson from this weekend for people to take away, is that, we all have frustrating experiences, but just as a collective, I think we got to get better about making sure that we're not just expressing our frustration in the wrong ways, screaming at the cashier because of the prices or something like that. It's not how to do things. So huge thanks to them. I thought they did an incredible job. The few times that I needed to take a breather, the RIP room was very, very much appreciated. And so huge shout out to them. And so that was the big priority one of Saturday, was getting this baby signed, getting to meet my horror idol. And it was absolutely a blast. So once that was done, it was pretty much off to the races. It was like, all right, I've gotten the big guns. I've got Brad. I've got Robert. Now it's basically just fun and games for the rest of this time. And so I walked into the convention center, and when I walked in, immediately I was right at Danielle Harris's table. And there wasn't too many people in line where the table is, but there was a ton of people outside wrapped around. So I walked up to the guy and I said, "Where does the RIP line start?" And he goes, and just points right in front of her table. And I was like, okay. So I just stood there. I was like 3 people behind. And so behind Robert and behind Brad, right alongside Fiona, because I'm a huge fan of her too, Danielle was the one that I was most excited to meet, because like a lot of us, Danielle Harris has been like a mainstay my entire life. I mean, whether it's Disney movies like Wish Upon a Star, things like Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, The Last Boy Scout. She was in an episode of Boy Meets World. So just all of that stuff is one side of it. But then, of course, you have Halloween 4 and 5. You have the Rob Zombie Halloween films. You have, Urban Legend. Like, of course, she's a mainstay in horror and continues to be to this day. She was just in Stream last year. But she's been in things that I've watched and loved all throughout my life. And so it was very cool to be able to meet her. So I got up to her and introduced myself, said I was a huge fan my entire life. And I told her a story, which is a true story, that whenever I was leaving to go to this trip, I told my youngest daughter, because she's always the one that has the hardest time with me leaving. She's very much a daddy's girl. And I said, hey, I get to meet the little girl from Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, because she loves that movie. I've turned her on to it. We watched it numerous times. And she goes, ooh, the one that holds up her middle finger? That's how she remembers her character, because every time we watch it, she goes, why is she allowed to do that, but I'm not? So I told her that, and she laughed. She had her kid with her as well, so she was talking about her kid and watching certain movies. And then I started asking about her podcast, because fun fact, the very first episode of Talk Scary to Me, which is the podcast that Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor Compton run together, the very first episode I'm in. I was one of the very first questions that they read, and it's back when they were asking for video questions. So I sent in a video of me asking a question, and I didn't even realize that they had read it until I had a number of comments. They're like, were you on Talk Scary to Me? I think that's your voice. And so I told her, I said, hey, obviously you would not remember this, but I was one of the first questions that you guys answered on your podcast. So that was really cool. And then I transitioned that into telling her that I was a YouTuber, and, had people messaging me, telling me about it. And then that kind of opened me up to being able to ask about a few things in the podcast world, and trying to focus on what she's doing now to kind of hold her interest versus being the 10,000th person to ask a question about Halloween 4. And then I asked her, well, actually, no, I fucked up. So I got a picture at the table with her. And so in the midst of asking so many things and having a really good conversation with her and getting things signed and then posing for a picture, I totally fucked up and forgot to ask her favorite movies. And I didn't realize until like an hour later. So it wasn't like I could just walk back to her table and be like, hey, so sorry, but I just had one quick question for you. I forgot. So I was like, God damn, I just fucked my whole idea. But luckily, there was one article on the internet where somebody at a convention about 8 or 9 years ago asked her that question. So provided that her answer has not changed, and I don't see why it would, Danielle Harris's 3 favorite movies is Back to the Future, Girl After My Own Heart, Terms of Endearment, and Peggy Sue Got Married. Really interesting one in there. I haven't seen that movie in a very, very long time. So you can definitely tell the generational difference there with her, and probably the way that Fiona was raised more on classical cinema and stuff like that by Brad. So you have a lot of really interesting picks from Brad to Fiona to Robert, and then Danielle is much more into like the mainstream stuff, which very much aligns with me. So I appreciated that. So those are her 3 movies, but yeah, I got a picture signed with her. And the funny thing about her table, I mean, she had a lot of like Halloween posters and stuff. And like I said, I don't really tend to get posters, but a lot of her pictures are pretty risque. So when I was at her table, I was like, damn, which one is going to get me in the least trouble with the wife when I bring this home? So I ended up landing on this one. I don't know if it was a good choice or not, but yeah, you got her here with Mikey, and it says, to Cody, Trick or Treat, XO, Danielle Harris, really good picture. And I have a professional photo op with her that I'll show you a little bit later. But some of these tables, the combos are really good deals. So I usually, if they're not really too expensive, I'll just go ahead and get both of those. So if you've never experienced one of these cons, typically when you go up to somebody's table, they'll have like a price sheet. And, you know, typically it's something like, you know, for like a median price, it's something like $60 for an autograph, $40 for a selfie, or $80 for a combo or something like that. So I got the combo with her, got a picture with her that I'll show up here. And I had a lot of people, they were like, man, I didn't realize she's so short. Keep in mind, I'm also gigantic. I have not met a single person, I don't think, who's a fan of this channel that has not led with, wow, you're way taller than I thought. It was like a running gag all weekend long. I had 2 running gags. One of them was anybody that asked, are you Cody Leach? And I would go with, I've never heard of him. And so there was that. It was always a good laugh. And then somebody would usually follow that up by saying, you're way taller than I thought. And I'm like, yeah, you'd be surprised how much I hear that. I think the camera takes away like 1.5 feet. So, yeah, keep that in mind. If you're looking for me at a con, look up. But at that point, to be honest with you, I was at a point where I had pretty much gotten all of the signatures and met all the people that I was really worried about. You know, I had the Dourifs, I had Robert, and I had Danielle, which were all the big hits for me. And so now I was at a point where I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to kind of walk around, casually hang out, and I don't know, maybe I'll meet somebody else. You know, they had Billy Zane there. They had his sister, Lisa Zane, who is the one who is the protagonist from Freddy's Dead. And I got to be honest, even though I understand, because there's no chance in hell I would go ask for an autograph for that film, I felt bad for her because her table looked like it was empty almost the entire weekend. I'm sure she had some people come through. It wasn't like I stood by her table the whole weekend. But that was the one table that consistently, every time I passed it, I was like, fuck, like I almost want to ask for an autograph now just because I feel bad. But yeah, so they had those 2. They had Ken Kersinger. Ken Kersinger was there, and he's the one who plays Jason in Freddy vs. Jason. And I almost got his autograph because his price was pretty reasonable. It was $50 for both a picture and an autograph. But sometimes I get a little bit nervous because I find myself in a spot where it would be cool to get their autograph, but I just can't really think of anything to say. And I don't want to be that guy that gets up there and actually gets somebody who's like actually really interested to meet me and talk about stuff, and I just can't think of anything. So like, I love Freddy vs. Jason, and I'm not somebody who hates his Jason. I think his Jason is fine. It's definitely one of the lesser Jasons, but I don't hate it the way a lot of people do. But that was kind of the whole thing. I was like, well, fuck, what do I want to say? Like, what do I want to ask? And so I ended up not getting his picture, which maybe I'll regret one day. I'm sure he'll be at another one. It'd be cool to get a picture of Freddy and Jason, get him and Robert to sign it. But I was a one and done with Robert. It was $140 for an autograph, so I definitely wasn't going to get 2. But yeah, I ended up passing on Ken. And then as you walked around, you got to this little Nightmare on Elm Street corner, kind of, where they had multiple cast members from Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And Tuesday night was supposed to be there, but she dropped out last minute. And then you had Amanda Wyss, who is the one who plays Tina in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And so I stood there for a while. I took a number of pictures with people right in front of her table because that was just like a really hot little pinch point there that a lot of people passed through that were apparently big fans of the channel. So that was like that was a big little meeting area for me. And so I stood there for a bit and I was like, man, I don't know. Like I walked around and I tried to find a really cool poster of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and was thinking about getting everybody's autograph on that. And I couldn't find one that I liked. There was one that was super glossy that I don't think I wanted in my room because every time the light hit it, I wouldn't be able to see what it is. And there was another one that felt like it was just a poster that was painted on, or it was printed on a bigger piece of paper that I didn't like the way that it was printed. So ultimately I decided against that, but I was like, you know what? Let me meet Amanda. I love the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Let me meet Amanda. And I'm here to tell you, Amanda Wyss was the star of the weekend for me. Amanda Wyss is in that S tier of meeting people, meeting celebs alongside Felissa Rose and alongside Henry Winkler as people that are just so sweet and so nice that they make the entire weekend with how great of an experience it was meeting them. So I'm so glad that I decided to meet her. So I walked up and introduced myself, told her I'm a huge Freddie fan, of course, and just super friendly, super, grateful for everybody that was there. And, we were talking for a little bit about certain things. And then I also asked, I said, I remember you had a small role in the first season of Dexter because she played like this social worker that was starting to get involved with Rita. And I said, did you ever keep up with that show? And so then we started talking Dexter for like a good 5 minutes, talking about the show and the directions that it went and the multiple endings and the reboot that's coming out. And she was telling stories about behind the scenes and like saying that Michael C. Hall was super nice to her and was super friendly and was wonderful. And everybody else in the set was very mean and cold to her. And I'm like, oh, that's disappointing to hear. So it was a subject that really opened her up because she probably doesn't get asked about it too much. I had the same success doing that when I met Carl Weathers, rest in peace. If you're ever nervous or really want to get somebody talking that they're going to be asked the same questions all day long, try to find a smaller work that they did, a smaller role or something they're probably not asked about a whole lot. Like I asked Carl Weathers about The Shield, and then I asked Amanda Wyss about Dexter. So we were talking about that for a while. And took a couple of selfies. I got the combo with her as well. And super nice. We took a couple of pictures and then she's like, let me do some selfies too. So she took my phone and started doing a few. And she was just absolutely wonderful. She was telling me I got to meet Heather Langenkamp. Her and Heather Langenkamp are best friends. And I was like, look, it's a huge priority for me. If I'm ever near a con where she's at, that's priority number one. I just haven't actually been able to make it to one yet. But she's, if you meet her, you got to tell her that I told you. And she was so awesome that if I'm ever at a con where she's at, I will happily stop by her table again just to say hi to her. I don't know if she'd remember me or not. That was also the funny thing. So I walked up to her table and I said, hi, Amanda. She goes, hey. She goes, have I met you before? And I said, no, ma'am. And she goes, you look familiar. And I said, well, I don't want to assume, but I am a YouTuber. I talk about horror movies and movies and stuff. So maybe you saw a video or saw me on Twitter somewhere. And she's like, oh, I don't know. So maybe Amanda Wyss watches my channel or watched it at one point, or I just have one of those faces. But nonetheless, yeah, she was incredible. Got her to sign this picture from Nightmare on Elm Street 1 with Tina here. She had a number of really cool ones with that opening nightmare sequence. It says, to Cody, it's all a dream. Amanda Wyss, Tina. And yes, so like I told you guys with Felissa Rose and like the experience that I had meeting Henry Winkler at MegaCon a couple of years ago, make those people a priority because they are just wonderful. They are the opposite of those don't meet your hero stories where people are cold and uninterested, or they just sign something and seem like they're really not that bothered with any presence that's going on in this place. She was awesome. So for as much as I did not expect to walk away from a weekend where I met Robert Englund and Brad Dourif gushing about anybody else, she was the best experience that I had that entire weekend meeting somebody. So loved it. Can't wait to see her again. It absolutely lit me up as a fan of Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm still kind of glowing about it. So moving on from that, I probably should have reversed these stories so that I could end on the more positive story. I did have one other interaction with someone that unfortunately didn't go so well. Every single time, and a lot of you guys know this because I talk about it anytime I talk about one of these conventions. Every time I go to a convention, I usually try to bring my dad back something because he is never able to go. Hopefully he'll be able to go to one this year because they have Nightmare Weekend coming to Savannah, which is a huge horror con from GalaxyCon. And so that's literally 20 minutes from here. So I'm going to try to twist his arm and maybe he'll actually go to one of these this November. And those of you guys that are in the area, please look into it. They've already got David Howard Thornton and Chris Sarandon, and it's months away. So it's probably going to be a big con. Expect to see me there. Anyway, I always try to bring back something for my dad. I always try to pick out the person that is in attendance that he would be most excited about and get them to sign something. So I brought him Henry Winkler one year. I brought him Juliette Lewis one year. I brought him Chris Sarandon one year. And the guest that was there that he was actually most interested in, even more so than Robert Englund and Brad Dourif and all them, was Mira Sorvino, because he's a huge Replacement Killers fan, loves that movie, and, you know, is a big fan of her. She was really prominent like in the early 90s. And so I stopped by her table, and I like her work too. But, you know, if it wasn't for my dad, I don't think I would have stopped at her table. I'm not like that level of a fan, but I do like a number of her movies. And I knew that they had the Romeo and Michelle reboot coming out of the sequel. So at least I had some talking points, but I stopped by her table and she was just getting back from her panel. So I was like second in line right away at her table. And like most of them, she has a whole bunch of pictures out. She's got the selfie combo. She was even signing Post-it notes, which is a cute little joke if you know Romeo and Michelle. And she had these two little sections at the end of her table that was like this homemade jewelry that was also for sale. And so when I finally got up to meet her, she was on the quieter side, and that's fine. I've met a number of celebrities that are on the quieter side, and I always just, you know, chalk it up to maybe they're a little more introverted. Maybe they get exhausted with all the social interaction. I'm that way, so I have a lot of sympathy for it. Is it disappointing when you get the tired interaction with somebody that you love? Yes, but I at least understand that. I don't take it as like a slight or them being rude. It's just being human. So she was a little quieter, and I was like, okay, you know, whatever. You know, and so I told her, I said, hey, you know, I'm a big fan of your work, and my name's Cody. And she goes, oh, but I'm signing this for Rich. I said, yes. Every single time I come to one of these cons, my dad doesn't get to go, so I always like to bring him like a gift. And so I picked the person in the room that he's the biggest fan of, and he's a massive Replacement Killers fan. So he absolutely loves your work, and this is going to be his gift this year. And so she signed it, and she signed him a really nice message. I don't remember. I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like, heard you're a big fan. Sorry, I missed you, sending you all the love or whatever. So I appreciated that. My dad really appreciated it. I'll try to put a picture up here if I can get a picture of it when I'm editing. But the disappointing side of this is that, you know, after I said, hey, you know, this is from my dad, it's a present for him. She was like, okay. And she's writing the nice note. But then I was like, I was sitting there and it was dead space. I said, so I heard you got a Romeo and Michelle sequel coming out finally. And she goes, we do. And I said, well, that's exciting. And she's just like, nods her head. I'm like, okay. And so she hands me the picture. I said, all right, thank you so much. But as soon as she hands me the picture, she's no longer focused on me, and she's only focused on the 2 or 3 people behind me that are all looking at her jewelry. And so she immediately just pivots away from me and goes into salesman mode, which I try to give a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Maybe the handler that she was with wasn't doing as good of a job at doing this, and so she felt like she had to take over. I'm not really sure. But she was focused on them for like a solid 3 minutes, and I had paid for the combo because I was going to bring my dad the autograph, and I was going to get the picture with her. And so I was standing there, and I had already handed my phone off to the guy who's going to take the picture, and he's standing there, and we're waiting, and she's dealing with them, and I'm still standing there. And then she kind of looks at me and then goes back over to them. And, you know, the guy, he's like, hey, sorry, just give her a minute. I'm like, it's okay. I'm good. You know, I'm a patient man. So we're sitting there for a while. And then she looks back over to me and she goes, oh, did you have the combo? And I said, yes, I did. She goes, oh, I'm sorry about that. And then she goes right back to them and starts selling again. And I'm standing here and I'm just like, what the hell's going on? Like this is not the best experience for somebody that just paid for an autograph and a picture with you. I barely got conversation, and now I'm being ignored. And so I was literally just kind of standing there getting frustrated. And I almost took my phone and just walked away. But I was standing there for a bit, and then eventually she wrapped up. And she comes back, or she turns back over, doesn't really look at me, and she just turns on this little dome light, this little like vanity light thing that's in front of her, and she's just sitting there, and she looks, and I was like, I said, do I come over there? Never had that experience before where I go behind the table because somebody doesn't get out of the seat. Usually when you take a picture, they stand up, you take a pose next to each other. But she would just sat in her seat, turned on this little light, and then I walked by her and she went. And so when you look at the picture, it's her and it's her banner, and it looks like I'm photobombing it. That's how little focus of it of getting an actual decent picture it is. I'm just like leaning in like, hey. And I said, thank you. And she barely said anything. I took my phone and I was just like, wow. Like, again, like bordering on rude, I guess. But I had heard that she's one of the people that had lost her home in the fires. Maybe that was lingering over her. Maybe the panel that she just didn't go so well. And she comes right back into all of that. Like, I don't know. I try not to be somebody who judges people on one bad moment because maybe it was just for a myriad of reasons. But I have to be honest, that was the most disappointing interaction that I've ever had at a con with a celebrity, where it just felt like they could not have cared less that I was there. And it was just very, very disappointing. So I'm glad I got the picture for my dad. I didn't go quite into graphic detail about that when I was telling him about the weekend because I didn't want to bum him out or make him feel bad. But yeah, that was disappointing for me. So, you know, I'm not going to say like, you know, don't meet Mira Sorvino or anything like that. Maybe she was a lot nicer to other people and I just caught her in a bad moment. But that was a rough one to end on. That was the last person that I met. And aside from the fact that I just already spent a lot of money, that was kind of the reason why I was like, okay, I think I'm done. I'm putting the wallet away and we're just going to leave it off with that. So it was a shame that I went from Amanda Wyss, which was by far one of the best experiences I've ever had meeting somebody, one of the nicest, sweetest people, and then immediately follow that up with Mira Sorvino, who is the most cold person that I've ever met at a convention. So is what it is, but wasn't the best note to end on. So now at this point, as I had said, I was pretty much done with getting autographs and going to tables, and I just kind of spent the rest of the time up until my last two photo ops, walking around, meeting people, checking out the different vendors and shops. I went out to my car at one point and just kind of like decompressed for like 45 minutes, get away from all the craziness. But one shop, I don't typically buy a whole lot at these cons, but one shop that really caught my eye was a vendor called Curious Goods. And he's a guy who travels, does a lot of different conventions, and he also has an Instagram page. So I'll put his information down in the video description below, and I'll show you some B-roll footage of his little shop. But he does all of these custom 3D posters, and he also ships them out as well. So if you're interested in any of his stuff, you can probably reach out to him and get him to build something for you or send it out to you. But these were so badass that I had to stop and grab one of these. I thought it was one of the coolest fucking things that I saw the entire time that I was at the convention, trying to get the lights the way that I want it. Hang on. Yeah. So here is one of the ones that I bought that was just absolutely killer. So it's a Terrifier 3 3D poster, which has Christmas lights in the background. I know there's a little bit of a glare. But yeah, you have this button here in the back. He builds all these, and it has these different light modes. So you can have them be solid. You can have them be going crazy. Whenever I have them on, I like them to just be cycling through the different colors. You have that one. So they're all really, really cool. But this one, the Terrifier movies, as well as like Maniac, a few others, he has like these little blood drip paint aesthetic to them. But it's a total 3D poster of Art and Victoria with that dead body right there. I thought that was so fucking cool. So I absolutely had to get this one. They had one from Terrifier with the girl upside down. They had one from Terrifier 2 with him scalping the one chick, but this one by far was the coolest one to me. So I bought this one, and there was like 5 of them that I wanted. There was a Phantasm one that was badass. There was one from Jaws that looked really cool. There was one from Aliens that was awesome. There was tons of them. But the other one that I absolutely had to have, as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, sold. Just wrap that up. Don't even tell me the price. Just swipe the fucking card. Santanico Pandemonium. Salma Hayek from Dusk Till Dawn. So I don't know if you could see in the background, but you got Richie and Seth and everybody in the background. You got the titty twister there at the bottom, and then you have her and the snake as kind of like in the foreground with the little glow behind her. You can kind of see the lights a little bit better over here, can't you? But yeah, there's, like I said, different modes for this one too, where you can have it be a little bit more pulsating. You can have it be blinking and solid. But I had to have this one. So this one and the Terrifier 3 ones are the ones that I got. Had I not spent so much money already on photo ops and on autographs and things like that, I probably would have bought 4 or 5 of them because they were just really fucking cool. So yeah, that was the one vendor. There was a lot of really good stuff. There was a lot of great artwork. Met one of the artists there. She was a fan of the channel, had really cool stuff as well. Ton of really cool stuff. But I have almost no room on my walls for artwork. So I got this as something that I can just stick up on my shelf over there, and I just thought they were too fucking cool. So I bought those. Definitely check out Curious Goods. I'll put his information down in the video description below. All custom made, all just one guy building them from start to finish. So check them out. Then, by the end of the day, it was time for my last 2 photo ops. And so I got my photo op with Brad and Fiona Dourif, which turned out very well. And the background, of course, is the little Playland's toy store. I'll probably put the more high-res image up if I get it sent to me in time. But it was a really good picture. And both of them were super friendly, too. Like, I was only I think the second person in line. And so, you know, they hadn't been exhausted with taking pictures yet. But they were even, like, talking to me for a quick minute before the picture took, which doesn't often happen. Usually it's like, stand, look, snap, next. And that's all the time that you get with them. But they were a little more talkative than most. Even Fiona, she's like, remind me of your name. So I think she remembered that I stopped by her table. So that was a great picture. And then I ended the night with a really cool experience. So I have already known that Danielle Harris, usually when she does these conventions, she does 2 different kinds of photo ops. She does one where she's in the clown costume as Jamie. And then she does one called a bloody photo op where she gets covered in fake blood. What I did not know, which I should have known, what I did not know is that if you sign up for that, it's, well, I wouldn't say it's expected, but it's an option. It's encouraged that you also get covered in blood. And so I didn't realize that until very shortly before my photo op. I don't remember if I saw it in the Facebook group or something, but I was like, oh shit. So I took off my Lost Boys hoodie that I love that I've been wearing all weekend. And I was like, okay, black t-shirt, I should be fine. But yeah, I was like the second person, and she's just got this squirt bottle full of blood. So I walk up and she's like, blood or no blood? And I'm like, absolutely blood. And so I just like close my eyes, and she's just squirting all over my arms, and she's spraying the blood all over into my hairline and down my beard. And so I just feel like these little cold water droplets everywhere. And then I made her laugh. I was like, this is like the slowest shower ever. And so she laughed, and we took a picture, and this picture turned out fucking great. This is one of my favorite pictures that I've ever gotten at a convention. Again, I'll put the more high-res image up if I have it, but it turned out really good. The blood splatter and everything looked great. The way that it's framed and everything has the Halloween background is awesome. So I was really, really happy that I chose to get this. I kind of wish I would have had time to go and get it signed, even though I like the other picture that she signed too, but that might be my favorite picture of the entire weekend. Again, even though I got one with Brad Dourif, Fiona Dourif, and Robert Englund, I thought this picture was just so fucking cool. So that was a lot of fun. Be prepared, though, because if you get that shit that she uses as blood stains like a bitch. So I had it on my skin. I had it down here. I tried to wash it off like in the sink at the convention, but it basically just turned everything this light color of red. And it eventually washed off like within the next day when I took a shower. But yeah, if you don't want to immediately go home, if you have plans or you have to travel or go on a plane afterwards or something, maybe have some preparation for that. I was laughing. I was telling Nathan, I was like, I'm going to end up like, I think I was telling Nathan this, where I said, I'm going to leave here. I'm going to go to like a fast food drive-through covered in blood and be like, hey, I just left the horror con. I didn't murder somebody and get hungry. I promise. So yeah, that was pretty much the end of everything. And then they had a really cool auction where I forget exactly what the organization was called, like Scares for Cares or something like that, where they got a whole bunch of really cool signed items that they were auctioning off for charity. And they had some cool shit. They had stuff that was signed by Val Kilmer. They had James Caan, something signed from Misery. And I almost raised my hand for that one, but everything was going for like $300-400. So again, if I had not spent so much money, I might have walked away with something. But they had all kinds of cool stuff. And then said my goodbyes and headed home. So it was just a really cool, fun experience, getting to meet two of my horror idols with Brad Dourif and Robert Englund, getting to meet a lot of other people that I love and respect and love their work, like, Danielle Harris and Fiona, having an amazing experience with Amanda Wyss. It was just such a cool weekend. And again, I'll reiterate it, meeting a lot of you guys is always like part of the biggest highlight of trips like that. So thank you so much to everybody that I met, everybody that stopped me, anybody that had anything nice to say, which everybody did. You guys are awesome. You guys are the reason that I still have drive to do a lot of this stuff. And I try to do the best that I can for all of you. So I hope to see you guys at a con in the future. If you're interested in Mad Monster, they're doing another show this coming weekend in Atlanta. So again, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they've got some of the Daredevil cast there and a bunch of other people. You can check out their website, but the tickets are still on sale. If you're interested in checking out Mad Monster and you're in the Atlanta area, go have fun this weekend. Otherwise, keep an eye out because they do shows throughout the year. I think they do another one like in August that's in North Carolina. I think they even do one closer to the West Coast. So they do a whole bunch of different shows, and the two that I've been to so far have been awesome experiences. So thank you so much to everybody that runs Mad Monster, everybody that volunteers at Mad Monster, to my buddy Nathan for helping out so much and giving me a great experience for the weekend, and to Fiona and Cody and everybody else that runs the RIP room, and to all of you guys. It was an incredible weekend. So next time Mad Monster rolls into town, come out, join all the rest of us freaks, and get mad for the weekend. Well, that is a wrap. It's like walking away at the end of a movie, like the Hulk. Mad Monster 2025 comes to a close. Had an absolutely incredible time this year. I mean, not just because I met a lot of my idols, the two main ones for sure, but met a ton of you guys, which was awesome. I mean, 30 to 35 of you, and that might even be underselling it, came up to me and talked to me, which was awesome. So thank you to those of you guys that do that. The con was just a lot of fun. The photo ops were great. All the vendors had really cool shit out there. But now the fun is over, and now I have a 4+ hour drive home. And you know what? It was fucking worth it, baby. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my 2025 new release movie reviews. I'm also going to put my Mad Monster experience video from last year. Please check out that one as well if you enjoyed this one. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.